business of raising money, it's not a business that's designed to make you wealthy or even to have an income for the first couple of years.
What are you doing to drive trust with newer investors?
It's really tough because the stuff that works is not the stuff that's good for LPs. Most investments are emotion driven, and the best marketers online know that, and they play to it.
The amount of conversations I have with LPs that are massively invested with sponsors have no idea the performance of their investment and cannot get a hold of their sponsor is just unnerving.
We're at a point in history where the people that can adopt AI and add it to their business are going to crush their competition.
Investors and operators, welcome back to the Invest Clearly podcast. I am your host and CEO of Invest Clearly, Pat Zingarella. In today's episode, we sit down with TJ Burns, a former Amazon engineer turned sponsor and founder of Burns Capital. After starting as an LP, TJ saw firsthand where investor communication and marketing fell short. Now, on the GP side, he's building with transparency at the core. We talk about systems he's created from an LP Discord community to AI-powered underwriting and why he's shifting from fund to funds to take more control. He shares his take on urgency-based marketing and what sponsors need to do if they want to earn long-term trust. If you're a sponsor looking to stand out by leading with transparency in tech, this one's for you. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the individual guests and do not reflect the opinions or recommendations of Invest Clearly. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. The appearance of a sponsor or investor on this show does not constitute an endorsement or a warning. Invest Clearly is an objective and neutral platform. Always do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. All right, TJ, thank you very much for joining me. Before we jump into it, why don't we maybe take about 30 seconds for you to introduce yourself and Burns and then kind of hop in some of the questions.
Sounds good, Pat. Yeah, thanks for having me. So my background's in tech, graduated MIT, and then went to work at a startup. Startup got bought by Amazon. I worked in a lead engineering position for 7 years. All the while was getting the entrepreneurial bug, mostly in real estate, bought some small multifamily, some single family, got my realtor license, and then started passively investing. And that was a really good fit for me because I was working this demanding job. I was in an expensive market, and I was really looking for diversification, exposure to real estate. I wanted to learn as well. I started passively investing and thought it was really great, but my timing wasn't super great. And this was around 2020, 2021. I did some really great deals. I did some deals that turned out to not be so great. And through that experience, I started to notice things that didn't seem right to me in how deals were marketed, in how deals were communicated. And I also realized that I really liked the business. I started working with an operator who I had a lot of trust in, who I liked what he was doing. And he took me under his wing as a partner. I started raising money alongside him, learning more about his operation. And that was the first deal I raised money for. That was back in 2022. And since then, I've been steadily growing my business, Burns Capital Partners. I've raised a little bit over $10 million to date across 8 offerings. And we've gotten even more specialized recently. We're moving more over to the operations side. We're doing 2 different types of deals, one on the multifamily side, one on the lending side. And that's where we're at.
Very nice. And so you were in Amazon. It's so funny, like there's almost direct parallels into my background as well. I was at Gartner, started listening to podcasts, started actively investing like small multifamily. I actually got my realtor's license because my wife did, and I went alongside with her. And then that led me to here, so it's kind of funny. But when you were at Amazon, did you start raising capital while there? Or was that when, I'm an LP and then left Amazon to pursue the GP path?
I did actually, yeah. So I worked at Amazon up until August of 2024. Nice. And I started Burns Capital Partners April of 2022. So a little bit of over 2 years of overlap there. And I think that was good for a lot of reasons. One, the business of raising money, it's not a business that's designed to make you wealthy or even to have an income for the first couple of years that you're in it. It's really a long-term business. The people that you raise money from, your investors, they get paid first. And the payout for people like me, it's supposed to come later on when you perform. And especially how we structure our deals, they're a little lighter on the fees, especially up front. That's because we just believe in what we're doing and we want to capitalize before we profit. But I needed my Amazon income to support myself for a long time. And it also helps in establishing your relationships. So at Amazon, I was one of a few people that had their feet also in real estate. And it put me in a position where I was able to better find those people that were perfect for what we were doing, people that would want to invest in what we were doing. Still to this day, a lot of my LPs, they came from Amazon relationships.
Very nice. Good stuff. Earlier you said you were an LP, maybe saw some things that you didn't prefer or you could have done better. And now that you are raising capital, what are a few of those things?
Yeah, so the industry is a bit opaque, right? There's not a lot of information out there, and the information that's out there sometimes sugarcoat, shown through rose-colored glasses. And in my experience, so I found myself in a couple of deals, and I'm thinking of a few in particular. Your classic value-add multifamily deals, Sunbelt, and just along the way, things wouldn't add up, right? For one deal, I got a huge distribution month 2, and it's a value-add deal. And I was on one side, oh, this is great, I'm getting money back already. Came to realize later on that they had just overraised for the deal and then just used that to fund distributions, even though it was this value-add deal that wasn't actually producing cash flow yet. Communication is another huge thing. I've in that same deal, communication was monthly, and then it became quarterly, and then it became intermittently whenever, and maybe every 6 months or so. And to me, it just felt like the people are used to information coming instantly in today's day and age. For the deals we do, at the very least, we do monthly reporting. Even if it's lighter reporting, we just want more touch points with our investors. And yeah, there's been a lot of things like that. And the biggest thing is that I just didn't have a community of other passive investors that could tell me if these things were typical for the industry or if they weren't typical. I felt like I was on an island, and we'll talk about some of the things that we now do at Burns Capital Partners with our investors to counteract that.
Yeah, I'd love to chat about that, because I think you were what I would say an early and one of the more active people on Invest Clearly. And that's obviously all based around trust and taking the business out of it. If we just focus on the trust aspect of it and the transparency aspect, you do some things differently than I've heard a lot of people do in terms of your Discord channel. So I'd love to talk about that. And I don't want to misrepresent it or anything, but you have all of your investors in one place chatting, right? Is that about right?
That's right. That comes directly from my experience and what I heard from some of my investors. I have one investor of mine who he's in a deal with a huge syndicator, hundreds of millions of dollars in AUM, and he has written the investment off to zero because he has no idea what's going on. He wants to talk with other passive investors. The GP won't answer him, let alone link him up with other people that might be in the same situation. He just has no clue. And after hearing this from him and also having that experience myself, I thought, why don't I set something up for my investors where they have a community if they wish to engage with them? Now we have a Discord channel that every passive investor we have is invited to. They can go in there, they can see all the different deals that we are managing, and they can read the reports for those deals so they know exactly what we're doing. And that's if they don't want to talk to us directly, which we talk with our LPs all the time. Some people, you'll find that maybe they feel positively or negatively, but they're not going to share that with you. Maybe they just don't have time. We have that Discord channel. If LPs want to connect with other LPs, they can. A lot of our investors are real estate investors as well. They're business owners. They ask questions to other investors. They ask about, other things in the industry.
Very cool.
And I just thought it'd be a really good thing, net positive for those LPs, especially if I felt we were building something that was valuable and that people would respond positively to. I found that with passive investors, they're very lenient if you just give them a base level of communication and effort. And I also wanted to put myself in a position where if I ever did start to slack, that people could call me out on it. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And so it's a pretty active community without you involved in it. It's not just they're communicating with each other. It's not just hey, here's my update thank you, there's actually a lot of engagement among the LPs in there.
A little bit. I think at its core, passive investors are still very busy people.
Sure.
They have, many of them, they own their own home. Maybe they have a side gig. They definitely have a full-time gig. Their spouse works. They have kids. So I think it's a lot of people that are also passively viewing the group. We definitely do get questions, but I think we also do a pretty good job of sharing information so that people, they already just know that what's going on and they don't have to ask too many questions.
Yeah, it's so important. I want to touch on what you said earlier about, okay, with a little bit of leniency, as long as you're communicating, the amount of conversations I have with LPs that are massively invested with sponsors that have no idea the performance of their investment and cannot get a hold of their sponsor is just unnerving. That's the thing is, in those situations, I say this all the time on podcasts and when I'm a guest, is people will talk about the potential loss of capital for a quarter of a second and then go into how poor the communication is for a lengthy conversation. It's the narrative right now. And what's tough is you see sort of the narrative, the industry changing. I think in the past couple of years, it's been all around achieve financial freedom, retire early. Now it's trust transparency in every LinkedIn post. So I just wanted to add to that. So let me ask this. It seems like you're really driving transparency among current investors. What about with new investors? You just started this in 2022. That could be I would say, a narrative people latch on to. What are you doing to drive trust with newer investors?
I think it comes down to the transparency thing that we've been talking about. I really don't want, and I don't expect new investors who find me on the internet to just blindly trust me. Again, I don't want that because I want these investors to make informed decisions for themselves. My belief is that the service that I offer, it is massively beneficial to a small group of people. And I know that because it was massively beneficial to me. I'm still one of the largest LPs of myself and will continue to be. And my view for this business would honestly be to turn it into a micro family office at some point and just get very specialized and invest my money into what we're doing. I know this is beneficial to the profile of person that I was, that tech employee or any W-2 employee that's super busy, wants to diversify, has no time. And my goal is to just provide as much content as I possibly can on what we're doing and our story so that those people can make a decision for themselves. And that's over any medium. If they want to talk with me, we'll schedule some time and I'll share everything I know and be as honest as I can. If they just want to read our case studies, they can do that. If they want to go into our data rooms and look at all the information around the deals, they can do that. I think one of the difficult things is that these investments, they are complicated. They really are. So it's very hard to make sure all of the questions are answered, to communicate all the nuance through content. And I have some people I've been chatting with for years that are still doing their due diligence. And that's great. There's no time scale on what I'm doing. I'd like to be doing this for decades.
Yeah, that's great stuff. This episode of the Invest Clearly podcast is brought to you by Scale IR. If you're raising capital, you know the hardest part isn't just generating leads. It's turning those leads into committed investors. That's where Scale IR comes in. Scale IR transforms your investor engagement process with their proven solutions that optimize lead qualification, accelerate investor conversations, and drive higher conversions. From seamless CRM integration and intelligent workflows to expert investor qualification specialists who handle your initial discovery calls, Scale IR gives your team freedom to focus on closing deals. If you're ready to scale your investor relations and capital raising effectiveness, visit scaleir.com to learn more and book your strategy call today. Scale IR. Engage smarter, convert faster. You mentioned content a couple times. One thing is a sticking point in the industry is influence versus education or marketing versus education. You're pretty active on LinkedIn. How do you balance that? What is educating an investor versus influencing the top of the funnel? How do you think about that?
It's really tough because the stuff that works is not the stuff that's good for LPs. And that might be surprising for people to hear that most investments are emotion driven. They're not driven by logic. And the best marketers online know that and they play to it. So you'll see in these types of investments, false urgency that's created. You'll see carrots dangled like high returns or business plans that worked out super well. Of course, you usually don't get the full story on all of those things. And the ones online that are sharing all of the hard things about the business, maybe they don't attract as much attention from LPs. So for me, I just try to report. I just try to document what we're doing and not worry too much about the marketing side of things. At this point in my business, I've reached the point where we get referrals, we get repeat customers. Early on in the business, it was much more top of the funnel driven, LinkedIn, people that I was directly reaching out to. So we don't have to do as much of that anymore. Our content is just reporting on what's going on as best we can.
Yeah, fantastic. And your goal, I saw on your LinkedIn, is to, at least a short-term goal, to scale up to 20 million under management, I believe is what it said. Is that number mean anything, or is that like just a next step for you, or what is that?
No, it doesn't really mean anything.
The next
it's
year.
One of those things where you need some kind of goal. And that's an example of marketing where it's a good way to capitalize on what I was saying in that specific paragraph, because you have to end it somehow. But for me, this is an infinite game. I really love what I do, and I love being an entrepreneur. I look back to my time at Amazon, and that was great for that period in my life. Would not want to go back, right? I have a 2-year-old. I spend so much time with him. I spend a lot of time with my wife, and I work on things that I find very meaningful and impactful, and there's a lot of upside in them. So the goal is really just to keep doing what I'm doing and to continue to find balance in my life. And I think the money naturally follows that. I don't have big aspirations for fancy house, jet, fancy cars. I don't really care about any of that. I want to make sure that my investors are taken care of. I think the money will follow for me, and I just want to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, awesome. And you run the fund model, the fund manager model, which I feel like you have an uphill battle with trust, because they have to trust you and then trust your ability to trust. How do you, I guess, convey not only your trustworthiness, but your ability to choose the right person to invest with? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And to clarify, we've done a lot of fund of funds. We've worked with 2 different debt funds. We've worked with a larger equity fund, and then everything else we've done has been co-GP, where we're involved in the partnership. And we're actually moving away from the fund of funds model. We haven't talked about this yet, and I haven't said it publicly online, but
there we go. Here's your shot.
Yeah, I do agree. It's an uphill battle. And the role of the fund manager is to underwrite the underwriters. So as a fund manager, you're not the one that's actually operating the deal. You're the one that is picking the operator, and maybe you're working out preferred terms with that operator. Maybe in some of our past deals, that operator is working at a scale that is not accessible to retail investors. So we work with one group that their minimum is $1 million. They're more of an institutional group. And our minimum is $50,000 that flows into their fund. But the challenge with that is, well, let me talk about the benefits first. So the benefits is that rather than compete against the best operators that you can find, you can now work with them. And there are some operators out there that I don't want to compete with because they have much more in resource than I have. They have much more experience, and it makes sense to just work with them. And as somebody that picks the operator, you can pick the best of the best. Mostly everybody will take investments. If you can raise money, they'll work with you. The challenge of that is, one, you give up control of what you're doing. So as a fund manager, you're giving up control most of the time to that operator. And the money you raise, you don't have control over what happens to at the end of the day. And I convey that to LPs, and they understand. And usually I have access to information that they wouldn't have access to in underwriting the underwriter. And as long as they understand all of that and we're aligned, then we're good. But the drawback, which is why I'm moving away from the fund of funds model, the fund manager model, and more towards having control over what we do, is that it's really hard to tell who a person's going to be 5 years from now. People are dynamic, they change. So I can underwrite you, Pat, today. 5 years from now, maybe your priorities have changed. Maybe your values have changed. Maybe my values have changed. Maybe they're not compatible anymore. The problem is that I've already given you control over what we're doing. And I've thought a lot about this. And if I want to build a long-lasting business, I need to have control over what we're doing. So the shift for me has been moving from those deals where I didn't have control slowly towards deals where we have more control, and then doing less deals overall.
Yeah. Awesome. And if are you comfortable chatting more about this, like
Yeah.
shifting more? How does your business mindset, especially around your investors, change as you start to make that shift into the operator role?
It becomes less capital focused, and we'll still raise money, but prior, my main responsibility was raising money, amongst other things. And there's all the compliance things that are associated with that, where you have to make sure that you're doing so in a compliant way. But at the end of the day, the value that I was bringing to the partnership was being able to raise money and form capital around what we were doing. Moving into the operator role, there are other things that I'm actually adding value to the partnership in. And for me, a lot of that has been tech driven, implementing AI into these businesses that are not run with tech whatsoever. Maybe they're run with a little bit of tech. We're working on something on the lending side right now it's all tech driven. My role is actually more on building that infrastructure as opposed to raising the money. We actually don't even have it set up in the US to raise money. It's all being raised from a partner that's outside the US. So in that case, there are no LPs that I need to worry about. It's all just building the tech. And I think for that specific deal, we will raise money in the US eventually, but you can see how my role is starting to change a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk more about the tech things you're doing, because I feel like I've been seeing you post quite a bit on LinkedIn, almost like taking a tech stack and replacing it, or like re-engineering it, like almost like, oh yeah, this was a multi-step Zap, but now I can do this and this. Like, can you tell us a little bit about what you've done with that?
Yeah, underwriting is a great example of that. So you think about the underwriting process for, let's say, a traditional lender. They're going to gather a lot of the materials manually. They are going to underwrite the loan manually. That involves them scouring the internet, talking to brokers, gathering all the information, logging it in some database. And technology is at a place now in May 2025 where you can do all of that automatically. And there are interfaces where you can build that out in a way that's not super tech heavy. So like my partner and I, he's a software engineer. My background's also in engineering. In building this lending business, we started from the standpoint of these like no and low code solutions. So N8N is one that I use quite a bit. It's low code solution, meaning that instead of building from scratch, writing code, you're building with building blocks that are already made, and you're just linking those building blocks together. Maybe you're writing a little bit of code, but we moved off that to then trying to build everything from scratch. And we pretty quickly realized that the technology in the low and no code space, so that's, Zapier, N8N, Make.com, it's really good. And there wasn't a need for us to go and build this stuff from scratch. But if we were going to build it from scratch, the tools over in that neck of the woods are also extremely good. Like we were using Claude Code, and even for people like me who I wouldn't describe myself as a proficient software engineer, I could still build some really cool things, right? Just because I have a little bit of technical experience. But going back to our vision, I think I'm one of those people that is like an AI early adopter. I think the technology is crazy. It's incredible. I think most people feel that way at this point. And I think we're at a point in history where the people that can adopt AI and add it to their business are going to crush their competition. It's going to be a huge wave. And businesses within real estate are especially susceptible to that because they're very document heavy. They're very manual. Real estate's very slow to change. So that's really our thesis for what we're building, with the lending stuff. And and we're doing it through those low code solutions.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Congrats for making that shift. It's a cool journey to talk about. All right, well, we like to keep these things tight for you. So I'd love to ask the burning question. What part of passive investing do you think needs to die?
Just because it's fresh in my head, I got an email last night from a sponsor that there was so much urgency in it. And when I was an early LP, if you sent me a deal, I was probably going to invest into it because it just didn't have any deal flow. And the urgent language worked on me. Act now, limited spots remaining. And sometimes that is true. Like we have deals where, we might have 2-3 spots left and we just want to let people know. So that's okay. But it's overused. It's used so much where it's not even true. And it's really just preying on people that don't have good deal flow. I think the inverse thing of what I'm saying is people just need better access. They need better deal flow. What needs to die is people just not understanding that there are many, many passive private real estate deals out there.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, cool, TJ. Well, first, thank you for coming on. Thank you for all of the engagement you have on Invest Clearly. Your profile's killing it on there. I know it's a big part of your strategy as well. Where can people find more about you and Burns Capital?
Yeah, well, I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Pat, for building what you've built. I think it's great for the industry. I'm not just saying that because I'm on the podcast. I really have gotten a lot of benefit out of using the platform. I think we have 20 reviews now on Invest Clearly. It's been really cool for me to see what people are saying. And I've had investors come through Invest Clearly that I didn't know prior to being on there. So I've had a couple of people that reach out and say, hey, I found what you're doing through Invest Clearly. I've had people invest because of that. Some people that I haven't even talked to at that point, they just went on, signed subscription documents and wired funds. So I think it's something that people are looking for. And we put a big focus on encouraging investors to leave reviews. So people can definitely find me on your website. They can also find me on LinkedIn, TJ Burns, and our website's burnscapital.com.
Awesome. TJ, thanks so much for coming on. It's been great.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks for listening to the Invest Clearly podcast. To find verified investor reviews or to claim your GP profile, please visit investclearly.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a review because that's how other people find the show. Till next time, invest clearly.